Hey everyone, and welcome to our channel, the Tysons. Today we're going to talk a little bit about everything we have had going on, and I'm going to go ahead and let Michael share with you.
Hey, I just thought I would take it back to 2002 with this hairstyle today. And the reason is because I'm wanting to feel younger. That's the main reason. So here is the story. We haven't shared this at all on YouTube. In fact, we haven't made a YouTube video in a very long time. But I coached our oldest kids in football this year, and the last couple weeks of football, which would have been in October, right? Mm-hmm. I had a headache, and it was like not a bad headache, just like a normal pretty bad headache. And then a couple weeks into this headache, I just started feeling like real weird. And one of the very last practices of that week, I didn't even get out of my truck to go and coach practice. And we were in the championship game. And I just didn't feel good enough to get out of the car. And I can't even describe it, just like nauseous, but I never got sick to my stomach, stuff like that. Another week goes by, and I had what I would call migraines for 2 days, where I laid in the bed, couldn't get out of the bed. Not as bad as my headache for viral meningitis, not even close. But, you know, I took a Excedrin migraine and laid in bed. And then got better, but still had a headache for another couple weeks after that. We got some sickness during that time, like probably just the flu. We had some family members that had that, and so that's probably what it was. And I just was like exhausted all the time. And so one day I drove my truck to a coffee shop down the road at like 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning, late because I had slept all morning.
Oh, pause this real quick. The night before this story he's about to tell, he was in the bed asleep, and he had been for about 18 of the 24 hours before that. So I had actually texted our doctor, who he had been seeing through all of this, treated for sinus infection, all of that. And I said, we've got to figure something out. We need to do some testing, because this is, that's way too much time sleeping. And so she was already aware of that. And then continue. Mm-hmm. That was the night before this story.
And so made it to the coffee shop. Couldn't even get out of the truck to go into the coffee shop. I was so tired. So I just went to sleep in the parking lot. Ariel called me like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just taking a nap." It was like 11:30-ish about this time. And right, something like that.
Yeah, but you had just pulled into the coffee shop.
I wasn't actually
fallen asleep yet.
Correct. Yeah, I wasn't actually asleep yet. I had just gotten there, whatever time it was. So she ended up coming, picking me up, taking me to our primary care doctor. They were going to give me an IV for like recovery and potential dehydration. I have had my blood drawn so many times over the last 4 years, and I have no aversions to needles at all. I could give myself an IV 100%, no problem at all. None of that. Well, he stuck me like normal, did a blood draw because they were going to do some blood work and stuff. And then when he went back to put the IV in, the vein had collapsed. And so he put one in my hand, and when he put it in my hand, I just passed out and woke up to vomit all over myself. And evidently, the doctor told Ariel that I was just talking out of my head. I don't remember that.
Yeah, like gibberish, but this is not the first time. He had done that maybe a week or two before this. But during that time, he had been sick, so we just kind of chalked it up to that. But it was late at night, and he had done that with me, and I'd already seen that. And so the doctor, when she said it, it was something I'd already seen him do.
So they sent me to the ER. Once we get there, I'm real out of it. So why don't you share?
Yes. So once we got there, his dad actually came and met me and drove us so that I could be with him in the car, and then his dad drove, dropped us off at the ER entrance, and he could barely even walk. I wanted him to be in a wheelchair, just because of how he was acting, the seriousness of it would show to the staff. But he did manage to get to a chair, but then slumped over. And then I went right up to the check-in girl at the ER, and I said, hey, our doctor said she was going to call ahead. Do you know if you got that? And she said, did you come in on an ambulance? And I said, no. She said, oh, then we don't get calls ahead. And I said, okay, well then can I just tell you the story of what's going on? And she said, no, he has to tell me. And I said, well, there's no way he can right now. And she's like, well, he has to give permission, or he has to basically be up here. And I was like, okay, well then I'll need a wheelchair. So she gets in the wheelchair and we get him in. And by this point, I had started to cry, just because this was my experience at the first hospital when we had the viral meningitis with him. And the doctor like completely disregarded it and told us it was nothing. And so I just was feeling all of that again at the same, like not the same ER, it was a different ER, but like the same situation with an ER.
And that was only a year and a half ago.
Yes.
That happened.
Yeah, so I start crying. Well, then a doctor or a PA, I'm not sure what she was, came running out as she heard me start telling the story of everything going on. And she checked him over and had him, she like held his face up to me and was like, is this side of his face looking drawn to you or sunken in? And I said, yeah. And she said, have you seen that before? And I said, no. And that was the first time I'd ever noticed that about him. And so she was the one that got us very quickly back to the room and got everything going. So
she was concerned of a stroke.
Yes.
And so they ran a bunch of tests, spent a couple days in the ICU, and they did a bunch of imaging and all that. Turns out that a year and a half ago, when I was in the hospital for viral meningitis, I had a tiny little cavernous malformation, or cavernous angioma.
Yeah, they usually say CCM.
CCM. About the size of a grain of rice, and they didn't see it. They're not super uncommon, but they, in most people, they don't affect you in any way, and so you don't even know that you have it. By this time, this visit in November of 2022, so not even a year and a half really, but close to, it had grown to about the size of a nickel. And it had grown because it was bleeding, although it's really a better description of like leaking out. It's hard to describe. You can look it up because you know the name now. Now, be careful, because everything you look up online isn't necessarily true, and everything the doctors tell you isn't necessarily true either. We discovered that, and the doctors told us some potential treatments that turns out would be actually completely detrimental to me, make it worse. And so that was that process. Ariel kind of reached out on Instagram to her followers. We got like just so many people.
It was like 720 responses for recommendations. Several of a lot overlapped, but that's how many responses we got. This is so great.
And it was great. And we have a good friend who is great at like spreadsheets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so Ariel got her all that stuff. She organized it for us so that we could just start calling. And I contacted a doctor who's doing his fellowship who had reached out to Ariel, and got the process rolling with him. And turns out that hospital and the doctor that is mentoring him is one of the most experienced surgeons and hospitals for my specific type of CCM in the world. And so we had a meeting yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Yesterday. So before I tell that story, should I tell the MRI story? It's entertaining. It's a little side note. I went in for my 1 month follow-up MRI to my neurosurgeon here. Went into the appointment, gave all the paperwork. I said, hey, am I going to be wearing these clothes? They're like, yeah. Why? I said, well, because my MRI. And they're like, oh, you're not here for an MRI. You're just here to go over your results of the MRI you had while you were in the hospital. I'm like, I already know those results.
Well, the worst part about it is he had multiple phone conversations during the scheduling saying, okay, I'm scheduling my MRI, and they confirmed that. So there was no doubt, there was no question of what they were supposed to be doing.
Including earlier that day.
Yes.
Anyway, it didn't happen, and so that was frustrating. Any of you that are dealing with like something major, I'm sorry, because the process often just makes it just so much more stressful. And I understand that doctors and nurses and hospital staff are stressed out like crazy right now too.
Yeah.
Everybody is.
Yeah.
Everybody is. But don't forget that those people that are in the hospital, even though you see just like a new face all the time, those people that are going through something are under it. And help them out a little bit extra than maybe you have been. Don't get jaded. And then also for all you people that are frustrated and the system's not working out great, and it's like one person told you this and then 100 people transferred you over here and you were on hold 30 hours. Do your best to calm down, because those people, some of them, really are trying. Anyway, that's a big takeaway for us. But yesterday we had an appointment with the surgeon down in Florida, and that just went great. Confirmed everything that I already thought and what I was experiencing, and it was just very confirming. And then we got surgery scheduled for next month in 2 weeks. So share your thoughts on all that.
Yeah. He was leaning towards surgery the whole time. But the doctors here were like, no, we're just going to watch and wait. We're just going to watch and wait. And if it comes down to it and we need to do surgery, no big deal. If we need to go in, take a chunk out of that part of the brain, not that important. That is exactly what was said.
Yeah.
But we were leaning towards surgery because it just, from our research and just from how we felt with the symptoms he was dealing with, that he cannot deal with these for a lifetime. And so the awesome thing was that this doctor was in line with everything that we were thinking and saying, and also very respectful of us and his work and what he's dealing with, and also said it was a really high percentage, somewhere in the 80 something percentile, that if this would continue to bleed every year for the rest of his life. And being only in his 30s, that's a long time to deal with that.
Well, eventually it would kill me.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest thing, is that we felt so comfortable with him. He just was saying exactly what we were thinking and confirming to us that this was the right decision.
Yeah. So we're really grateful, and just every step along the way, we just believe that our God has kind of paved the road. God doesn't pave roads for people that deserve it or that have earned it, because we're messed up people just like you, but he does it because of his grace. And so we're grateful for that. And it's just like one confirmation after the other, things are rolling. And the struggles that I've had over the last year and a half, and everything that I've been saying, and like when I started brain treatment trying to recover from the meningitis, I was trying to tell the doctors, it was like, I just feel like this part of my brain is still asleep. I just feel like I can't access it, like I can't wake it up. And guess where this CCM is? It's in my right temporal lobe. And so, yeah, I'm sure a lot of the things that I've been dealing with are damage from the meningitis, but to some degree, and I believe to a large degree, it's because my brain's been seeping blood. You know, I mean, anything can happen in brain surgery. I mean, they're cutting a hole in my skull and taking a knife into my brain.
Stop.
But that's why we tried to find the best doctor we possibly could. And
and where we're going to Florida for, I mean, that's, I guess, another part of the story too. So yesterday, we got this appointment so quickly, in part because we had that connection through the fellow that was under him. And then we, yesterday while we were on the phone call we asked when surgery would, when that would be next available. And he said, well, not by the end of the year, but I could get you in January. And so Michael said, well, we're going to be down there at my parents' after Christmas anyways. We were planning on leaving on the 1st or the 2nd, but we would be willing to stay some days longer instead of making the trip twice. And he said, I could get you in on the 4th. So he goes in on the 3rd, surgery on the 4th. So that's amazing.
Yeah. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, listening to our conversation of me trying to remember what happened. And this is like one of the biggest frustrations, because any of you that had know me in real life, like before I started getting sick in the brain, you know that like, oh dang, what's the word? Extemporaneous speaking?
Yes, that was a gift that he had.
I can't even remember the word now. That's been like frustrating. The YouTube, like this kind of video was so easy for me. Like this kind of a conversation with somebody, just telling them a story, talking about what's going on, making a video, film, that kind of stuff. And now, like, I mean, I preach, I write a sermon and deliver it weekly. Well, I mean, I haven't been because I've been really sick, but that's my job. And last Sunday I preached, had to sit down the whole time, and I just had to make like a lot more detailed notes.
Not go off on rabbit trails.
Because I can't bring it back. Now I am saying, hey, can you pass me that? I think we need to change the lights in here. So, man, we're just grateful, but also anticipating and praying and hoping that I recover better than I've been the last year and a half. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for praying. It's also going to be pretty stinking expensive, and we're not worried about that. We're just, again, just so grateful. But my biggest prayer is definitely that I can get back to being myself, because I got a lot to do. I got a lot I want to do. I got a lot that we want to do together. We've got so many dreams and so many passions that we want to be a part of, and do it together and do it the way that we know that we're capable. So thank you so much for checking this video out, for subscribing to our YouTube, for following us on TikTok and Instagram. It really means a lot to us. You just have no idea what the social media side of our life is like, the impact that positive and negative of it has on our lives. I'm sure there'll be coming a part 2 at some point. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And Happy New Year.
Done? Okay. Hey, everybody.